You know I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, I'm very excited to have a radio icon and a fellow Mets fan on here with us today.
We're going to get right to this because we've had a little bit of difficulty trying to schedule him in. You and I have believed that he was going to prank us or have something ready to go for us, but doesn't seem like it's the case. He seems like a good guy. We'll get to that in a bit. But he is the current executive producer and writer for the Elvis Duran Show. He's the host of several other podcasts, including the Brooklyn Boys podcast and Walker and Talkers. We're really, really pumped to have him on, and we're going to have a jam-packed show. It's going to be really entertaining and a lot of fun. David Brody. David, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. It was a great intro. I will correct you, though. The fact that I didn't prank you has no weight on whether I'm a nice guy or not. I'm a nice guy, but I do prank call people, so that shouldn't take away my nice claim.
All right. Well, we'll get to that. You know, we'll feel each other out. We'll give each other a little
I'm not
time.
that nice.
But I want to start because I have a nugget for you. I know something about you.
Okay.
Something very, very, very specific. And I want you to confirm to our listeners if this is true or if this is false.
All right.
Ready to go?
Yep.
I hear that you absolutely hate bad grammar. You hate bad grammar so much that for your internship, for interns who send cover letters into you, if there is grammatical mistakes in those cover letters, you do not even consider them. Is that true?
That is very true. That is very true. Now, it depends if it's a typo, which is, I can excuse that if it's one typo. But my favorite grammatical error, and I tweet this out every semester, most of the time people will say, I'd love to be a part of your show. But when you say, I want to be a part of your show, and you make a part one word, that's the opposite of a part two words, right? That's the idiosyncrasy with the English language. So if you say you want to be a part one word, I usually say you already are, and you're going to stay that way. So that's not a typo. That's you not knowing which a part to use. We're in a communications industry, and although we don't write a lot, I feel like you should put some effort in. You should proofread. And I get a lot of copy and paste cover letters, meaning I really want to work for your company, Z100, because I feel I would be an asset in the role you have posted. And it's clear that they didn't write a cover letter for me. They wrote a cover letter and they keep pasting it in. What happens sometimes is they'll paste it and there'll be a double space because you can see they pasted it, or they don't get all of the other companies' names out. And so it'll be like, oh, I really want to work for you at Z100. Love Z100. Thanks, Fox News. You go, okay.
So I used to be guilty of this, and it's nice to know that in the professional world, that stuff actually does matter. I think that's a really good tidbit for our listeners. So who do you think my leak was? Who do you think provided that information to me? Are there any other interns through the years who stand out in your mind who you remember?
Well, I'll tell you this to answer your question without knowing who tipped you off. We've talked about it on the air a lot. We've talked about that on my podcast a lot. And I've tweeted about it a lot. So it could have been any of those sources. But who tipped you off? Gosh, it could have been anybody because I'm known for that. So who tipped you off besides Skiri, my co-host?
So she is a dear friend of mine. She says she is one of the elite interns, and she says that you hired her on the spot. One Miss Jada Montemarano. Do you remember?
Staten Island Jada. Yeah.
Staten Island Jada.
Or as she would say it, Jada Montemarano.
Jada Montemarano. Yeah. Yes.
Jada's fantastic. Jada's fantastic. And despite
Amazing.
her Staten Island accent, no offense to Staten Island, her grammar is fantastic. Right on the money. And she's on television now in California. Couldn't be any more proud of her.
Absolutely.
She's terrific.
No doubt about it. A success story coming from you, and I guess it all started with the cover letter. And
it did. And then you know what? One of my interns got a job at E! Online in California started as an intern, got a job. And then when she went to California, I connected her with that former intern, and that intern got her a job at E! And that's sort of how she ended up on television. So once once you intern with us, it's not just the semester and you're done. I try very hard to stay in touch with and keep promoting and influencing and guiding interns as they go on. So Jada is one of many that I keep in touch with.
What a good guy, Joe. You were right off the bat. Speaking of good guys, or so we think, how excited are you about Steve Cohen owning the New York Mets?
Oh.
And also, how relieved are you that A-Rod and J Lo
Oh my God.
were down on the Mets?
Okay, so the first question, remember when little orphan Annie left the orphanage and Daddy Warbucks
Yes.
wanted to adopt her? Remember how happy she was? That's how I think every Met fan feels about Steve Cohen. And I happen to know the Wilpons. I've worked with the team for many years. Nice people, but not good in business. And, and ever since the Madoff scandal, they were devastated. They just could not keep up financially. 2015 was a fluke, worked out well. They had a lot of young pitching. But to have somebody come in now who trades for Lindor, signs a lot of players. Now, look, we didn't get the top 3 guys, but I think we were smart. Look, Trevor Bauer is already fighting with Major League Baseball, so I'm not upset about that over his belt buckle. And Springer, yeah, he probably wanted a little more. I would have gone for Springer.
Absolutely.
I think they made a smart move with McCann, because if you didn't get Real Muto, right, McCann would have signed with somebody else and you have nobody.
Right.
So I love the move. I think it'll pay dividends over the course of the next few years, not just this year. I think you can't look at it as 1 year. I think if they go from 3rd or 4th place to a wild card or a playoff team, that's a huge step in 1 year. I'm fine with that. But, they do need to win while DeGrom is in his prime. And I'm going way beyond your question, but now I'm all excited.
Yeah, we're gonna get right into the Mets even more so. But listen, Steve Cohen, he outbid A-Rod and J-Lo. We all know that.
Oh, I didn't answer that part.
But
yeah, that's a travesty.
I think people are saying, oh, the Mets dodged a bullet, but who knows? Maybe that's where things went south. They didn't get the team. There was some issues that could have held them together and made them stronger if they owned the Mets.
Right. Well, listen, if the Mets are responsible for them breaking up, I'm fine with it. I'm not an A-Rod fan, not only because he was a Yankee for the most part of his career, not only because he snubbed them, or he wasn't a good fit in 2001. He's a 2-time cheater. And getting back to grammar, I know people can't help it, but have you noticed that he can't say the letter Z at the end of words? He can't say pitchers. He says pitchers.
Pitchers, yeah.
Pitchers, catchers, right? I can't stand that. And that's fine if you have an impediment.
You're
but then don't be on ESPN.
You're standing in the batter's box.
Batter's box, right. He's a billionaire. You should work on that. Get a speech instructor. But he's on ESPN. And if he owned the Mets, I'd have to hear his press conference about how we have a great staff of pitchers. And I couldn't handle it. I'm glad you noticed it too, Joe.
Could have got Cespedes back, and that would have been
Cespedes. Oh.
Well, it's a sad day. I mean, what a power couple. We haven't seen this big of a power couple in music since, I guess, Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. So it's a sad day.
Or Kanye and Kim, and they're breaking up. So
yeah, no doubt about that.
But hey, A-Rod and Alex say that. I mean, A-Rod and J-Lo say they're working on it. It still could be a thing. God, I don't care.
What do you think's more likely to happen? Do you think that A-Rod and J-Lo stay together, and they get married, or Kim Kardashian gets married to another person first?
Wow. I think Kim Kardashian needs to be married. I think she needs to be in a committed relationship. I don't think J-Lo knows how to be in a committed relationship. They just keep ending. And A-Rod, but the thing is, they're perfect for each other if you like dating yourself.
Right.
Right. They're both narcissistic. They're both looking in the mirror all the time. They both talk about themselves in the third person. So if you love yourself and they love themselves, it seems like that would be a good fit. If you can't marry yourself, then you marry someone as close to you as possible. Who's closer to being J-Lo than A-Rod, and vice versa?
Did you see the meme online where it said that J-Lo has almost as many engagement rings as Tom Brady has Super Bowl rings?
That's excellent. I don't like him either, so it's good.
Who do you like, David?
I like you guys, but we'll see how that goes.
We'll see. Stock can go down still. Now, we're really curious about here is your origin story here. Everyone knows you as the producer for Z100, the morning show with Elvis Duran. But
Right.
how did you get your start? Were you originally in radio? Were you doing writing for some talk shows? How did you get started, I guess, in radio and comedy?
Well, so my dogs are barking, which means somebody's coming home. So forgive me. I don't know if you want to just keep the ambiance of the dogs. That's fine.
Absolutely.
Hey, go upstairs.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah, I was writing for some TV shows. I was writing monologue material for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher, which was his old show. I had written some stuff for Conan O'Brien. But my whole life, I wrote song parodies. I grew up on Weird Al Yankovic. I grew up on the Dr. Demento show, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a novelty show syndicated around the country that plays funny songs, comedy bits, radio bits. And so my first record albums were, if you know who Alan Sherman is, the song "Hello Mother, Hello Father." It's so he was Weird Al Yankovic's Weird Al Yankovic. So that's who Weird Al grew up listening to, and so I would always write songs. So I would write them in class if there was a substitute teacher, just for fun.
You know, Dave, this kind of reminds me of 2000 when the Mets made the run to the World Series and we had to keep hearing who let the dogs out.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good. Yeah. Well, you know the story behind Who Let the Mets Out, right?
No.
Oh, well, I wrote that. And the Baja Men recorded it, and they played it at Shea Stadium. It was all over the radio.
Wow.
So, yeah, I thought that's what the reference was.
Well, I remember when you guys did the 2006 theme, the Team, the Time.
Oh, yeah, with Lucas Prada.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
hopefully
so,
we get
yeah.
that back in 2021.
Well,
Oh,
we
Who
did a
Let the Mets
remix.
Out?
We did a remix for 07 and 08, but they collapsed. So we didn't get to do it. But I did write new versions. And I did write a song for 15, but that didn't work out well either. So anyway, if you remember, America Online used to have profile pages, and you would put in your hometown, your hobbies, your interests. So you could search if you wanted to meet someone with the same interests, right? Or locally, right? I'd search for Mets and you'd find people who like the Mets to communicate with. And I had comedy writer in my profile, and somebody at a radio station in Boston reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, I work at a radio station in Boston. I have singers and musicians who do song parodies. I need people to write song parodies. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, how much do you pay?" They said, "We'll pay you $30 a script." I said, "Well, okay, I'm not making any money doing that. So sure, $30 is fine, but I want you to," I'm going to date myself here. "I want you to give me a cassette of whatever you record that I write so I can put a demo together." I did that for about 6 months. My songs were ending up back on New York radio stations. He was selling them to a comedy service. The way that works is not everyone has New York talent, right? They don't have singers walking the streets of the city looking for jobs. So if you're in Oklahoma and you're like Bob and Steve in the morning, you pay a company to provide you a certain amount of comedy every week. Then you go on the air and you pretend that you wrote it and produced it. And so this company in Boston was then selling what I wrote once it was produced to a company that sold it. And then there were New York radio stations playing my stuff. So I didn't like any of those radio stations. I won't name them, but I put the demo together and I submitted it to the morning show at Z100, which I did like. And I did find them to be in line with my parody sense of humor. At the time, it was Elvis and Elliot in the morning. It was Elvis and Elliot in the Z Morning Zoo. Elliot got my demo, called me. He said, "Love what you did. We need, what are you looking to do?" And I said, "To be honest, I'm just looking to make people laugh." And he said, "That's what I want to do. We should work together." And so I started faxing in scripts. They would produce them with their company. Eventually that company hired me to be a comedy writer for them. I'm still there 23 years later. And then after a couple of months, he said, "Oh, you should come in and hang out in the studio and meet everybody. They love your work. They'd love to meet you." So great. Okay. So I went in. At the time, they were in Secaucus, New Jersey, in the middle of the swamps of the Meadowlands.
I know that all too well.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrible area. And they told me, "Listen, when you go in the studio, don't talk, right? And don't make any noise because Elvis runs the show and he doesn't like people in the studio. He likes you from what he knows of you, but just don't talk, stand in the corner." So, okay. Yeah, sure. Not a problem. Live radio. I get it. So everybody said hello to me. Elvis was very friendly. Elliot was happy to meet me finally. And I stood in the corner. And as the show was going on, I was making notes about what was going on in the news, what was topical, what were the entertainment stories, because I was still faxing in jokes to Jay Leno.
Wow.
And so as they were talking, I was writing down jokes I would send to Jay Leno on a napkin with a Sharpie. So they were kind of splotching. This was way before, you could just put it in your phone. So I didn't have a notepad or anything. And Elvis looks over and he says, hey, what are you doing over there? What is that you're writing? I said, oh, I'm writing jokes for Jay Leno. And he said, well, give me that. Let me see that. He looks at it and he shows it to Elliot. And he says, you're going to stand in my studio and write jokes. You write them for me. Give him paper and a pen. And so they gave me paper and a pen. I wrote jokes the rest of the show. After the show, he said, you come back anytime you want. And so I did. I was working in retail at night, managing retail stores. And then in the morning, I would go into work at the radio station and learn and get good at things and learn, audio editing and how the whole show worked. And then at some point, I quit my job and hung out there for, almost a year, working at the comedy company and then getting paid sort of a monthly consulting fee because there was no job. And then after about a year, they found a job for me and hired me as a writer. And then a few years later, I became executive producer. But it was all kind of a fluke.
I mean, it's still really, really freaking impressive. And I think he had a point. You're in his office, you're in the studio, you write jokes for him, makes total sense.
That's it.
I want to ask the biggest difference between writing comedy for radio and writing comedy for TV. Because when you write comedy for TV, you're trying to match joke to face, as opposed to radio where there are no faces. Now, obviously, when you're as big as you guys are at Z100, there are people out there who can match faces to radio. But for those out there, what do you think are the biggest differences?
Well, I'll tell you, I never, it's really matching voice. And I don't mean spoken voice. I mean comedic voice. So when I wrote for Jay Leno, I didn't send him the same jokes I would send Bill Maher because they have a different sensibility. So it wasn't so much what face Jay Leno would make when he told the joke. It was, would he embrace it as his own? Would he be able to tell it as if he wrote it? Right? I couldn't write very edgy stuff for Jay, but I could write very obnoxious political humor for Bill. And so when I write for Elvis, Elvis likes a lot of puns. He likes fun. He doesn't like mean. Whereas when Elliot worked there, Elliot liked mean. Elliot liked razzing athletes and women he didn't like and whatever. He was the obnoxious shock jock of the show. And so when I wrote for him, I would never give those jokes to Elvis as he was talking because he would look at him and go, I'm not saying that. I'm never going to say that. And so you really have to write in the voice of the person more than the facial expression. And then the only other difference is that TV, you'd have to get the joke in first, but then you have to sit back and wait 12 hours before they use it, before you can see it if it worked or not. And then you hear the audience laugh if they liked it. In radio, it's almost instantaneous in that if he uses it, it's good. But until we had text messaging and social media, you never knew if a joke went over well, unless somebody called and said, oh, what you said 10 minutes ago was hilarious. So you would write into an empty void. You have to hope that somebody heard it, understood the joke, and laughed because, when I used to do stand-up comedy and sketch, it was instant, right? There's an audience there. And if you say something and they laugh, it's instant and you get that feedback. But in radio, you write a joke and Elvis will say it, right? Or I'll say something into the microphone and you're like, I hope that worked. You don't know. So those are some of the things you have to think about.
So obviously, mostly well-known for the phone tap segment. How did you come up with that and how did you pitch it and get that approved?
Well, it wasn't my idea, but here's what happened. Prank phone calls are an age-old radio thing, right? We've all made them as kids one way or another. And at the time I was doing, like I said, sketch comedy and improv in a group, traveling colleges and comedy clubs in the tri-state area. And in the summer of 99, Elliot left the show, right? The obnoxious, very male humored person left to go do his own show in Washington, D.C. And Elvis and the rest of us had a meeting on how we were going to replace that comedy, right? We weren't going to be talking about sports as much. We weren't going to be shocking as much. What could we do to push the envelope a little bit? And if you remember Greg T on our show,
Of course,
he was one of the people that said we should bring back the prank phone calls, which were called nutcrackers before I started on Z100 in the 90s and 80s. They were nutcrackers. And so they went, all right, but who's going to do them? And Greg T said, well, let's have Brody do them because he does improv. He's funny. He'd be good at it. So I said, sure, no problem. I listened to old tapes and then I put my own spin on it. I did maybe 15 of them. They were very popular. And then Elvis wanted them every day. Well, it's hard for one person to get a good one every day because you're hoping people answer the phone. You're hoping they give you permission. You're hoping they're funny. And so I taught the other people on the show how to do it, how to lead into the call, how to trick them, when to get obnoxious, how to end it. And I work with them and listen to their stuff. And then eventually they all figured it out. And as we've hired new people, I teach them how to do it if they don't already know how to do it.
How tricky is it sometimes, maybe it isn't, to actually get the participants' permission to use the call?
I would say 80% it's not a problem. Usually people know their friend, they know their coworker, they know their spouse. Sometimes we've offered Met tickets or Yankee tickets, or
Nice.
we used to have what was called a Z100 bill, right? We'd say, listen, tell your dad we'll send him to the Mets game.
Wow,
Right.
it sounds like the New York City convict package when you get out of Rikers Island.
Right. We give them a tie, a new shirt, and some tickets, and send them on their way. Some people have held out for a Z100 bill, which is what we used to call it, which is a certificate for $100. And then if it was a really, really good call, and I'm not talking at a school here because we don't do it anymore, so I'm not giving away any secrets. If it was a really, really funny call and they were really adamant about it, we'd give them Jingle Ball tickets. And because that's invaluable, right? So
Right.
if your daughter is telling you, Dad, you got to let him air this, I'm going to go to Jingle Ball, Dad's going to say, all right, fine, but beep my name or don't mention where I work, or there's always some catch that they say, well, all right, but I said something about women's asses, take that out and then it's fine. So
Okay.
you kind of haggle with them, but usually it's not a problem. I was just going to say, we've had a few that say, nope. And we've had some where they air them and then they get so much crap from their coworkers, they say you can't air it again.
I think it's crazy that some people don't realize that you're not doing that live. I think some people are thinking that you're not doing. There's like a lot of production that goes into that, I'm sure, afterwards.
Yeah, well, it probably some calls take 45 minutes.
Wow.
Because they hang up, you have to
Right.
call them back. But on the air, all you hear is click, ring, 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 pick up. But it could be the line was busy. It could have been we did 3 calls, but the second one wasn't funny, or they weren't buying into it. So we cut it down to about 5 minutes. But the process, sometimes we go in the studio, we're in there for 3-4 hours before we get one that we feel is funny enough.
Damn. Who is your favorite character to play when you're doing these prank calls?
Of mine?
Yes.
Well,
Or just in general, or anybody's character.
no, I'll be selfish about mine. I like the Magnificent Murray, who's a magician, and all of his tricks are, I don't know if you've heard it, but his tricks are completely obnoxious. Like pick a pocket, where I bring the kid up on, I tell the woman I'm going to bring the kid up on stage. He's going to go to my backside and look at my 2 pockets. I tell him to pick one of them and put your face up against it, see what you can hear. And then I fart in his face. And then the crowd loves it. And inevitably the parent goes, you can't fart in my kid's face. So, or I cut my hand off, or I vomit on the audience. So all the tricks are very awful. I like that one. I like Abe and Gabe, where I play an old Jewish man and his son. And I switch back and forth between where I'm doing both voices, and I'll say, my name is Abe, and I'm telling you, you ripped me off at the roast beef counter. And I'll say, Dad, cut it out. Don't yell at me, Gabe. Don't tell me. And I'll kind of argue with myself as I'm on the phone with them, and they don't realize they're talking to the same person. So anytime I can do a character or use my song parodies, I do a character called Jimmy Jingles, where usually somebody has wanted to book a DJ, or they have a bar mitzvah, a wedding or something. And the spouse will tell me, pretend I hired you as the DJ. And then and they give me all information about the family. And then I do little hooks of hip hop songs of horrifically offensive, insulting jingles. And I go, okay, I did 6. I need you to pick out your favorite ones so that we don't go long. And I'll play them about them being overweight or being a slut or whatever. Obviously it's not real, but I'm like, and then they inevitably I'll put the husband back on the phone with the wife, and she'll say, "What kind of maniac did you hire?" And I tell him when she says that, tell him, "Are you kidding? Jimmy Jingles is the best. Everybody knows Jimmy Jingles," where it makes it look like she's crazy. So those I like when the person setting it up gets involved in it. Those I like a lot.
Yeah, those are always fun. Now you mentioned Greg T, so I wanted to ask you, what over the years there's been plenty of changeover. I mean, the core's still there, but Carolina left, Greg T, Carla Marie, Anthony, Bethany, TJ, John. How do you guys continue to just chug that right along and not really, bring new people in, but the chemistry never seems to be impacted?
Well, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Elvis because he wants to be surrounded by a certain type of person. And because you're asking, I'll be honest with you, I'll give a lot of credit to myself because a lot of our show is filled with interns, people that I hired and trained and cultivated, like Lauren and TJ, who went to Boston, and Carla Marie, and Garrett, who's on the show, and Sam, who's on the show. And I have people who were my interns, like Jada, hosting radio shows around the country. The other thing I do, and I do it for my company, actually, I help other radio stations do it as well. I scout for talent. And so when we hired Bethany, so I found Carolina in 2004. We were looking to add a louder, brasher person to the show. I found her when I swept the country for talent. They took my recommendation, they hired her. But I already knew at that point, because Bethany was my second choice, that if Carolina ever left, I might want to hire Bethany and recommend her. Right. So I had a list of people that when Carolina was going to leave, Bethany was on my list and some other people. So, and then we had new people apply, but I put forth a list and I said, Elvis, I think Bethany's the most talented of the bunch. I've been a fan of hers for a while. I think she'd be a good person. But here's the audio of the best we have, but that's my pick. And he met with her and was like, "You're right. She's fantastic." And then when she had applied in 2012, Gandhi, who's on our show now, was my second choice. Terrifically talented, wrote song parodies and comedy bits. And I became friendly with her. Like I do a lot of applicants, I stay in touch and I see where they're going to be. And if I don't have room for them, when somebody like in Washington, D.C., the Kane show, with the time, Kane just passed away, unfortunately. When they call me and say, "Hey, I need a co-host or a sidekick," I go, "Oh, well, here's some people I really like." And I recommend them. And I've had people on radio stations around the country hire people that I recommended that I didn't have room for. And so Gandhi, I couldn't hire her at the time. I recommended her to Boston, Maddie in the Morning. They hired her. And then when it was time that Bethany was leaving, first person I called was her. And I said, "It's time. I think you're ready. Let's do this." And again, I present her with a bunch of other people to Elvis. And, I know who I'm dealing with. I know his voice. So he seems to like my choices. So I kind of put them out there and I say, "This is who I recommend." And then he's the one who makes the decision and says, "That person's fantastic. Yes, I agree with you. Let's get them in here." So that's sort of why the show keeps going, is that we just keep surrounding ourselves with the same intern over and over again, the same kind of co-hosts over and over again. It's no different than sports. How do the Yankees keep winning? Well, there's overlap. Right. 3 people leave from the championship team. They bring in 4 new guys and then they win again. And you just keep it going. You don't turn the whole roster over, but you bring in Yankee, the pinstripe type. There's a type, right? You bring those players in and you keep it going. And that's what we try to do.
Right. Just like Mike Francesa was in the afternoons. You guys are number one, and it's because
number one.
Number one.
Now, hold on. If I'm Mike Francesa, while you're talking to me, I gotta just start scrolling through my phone.
Yeah. Crack open a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Now,
cover the label though.
I used to intern WFAN. I kid you not. I went to his office once, and it was like a Costco with the big crates of Diet Coke from ceiling to floor. But
who did you intern with?
I interned at WFN, so I did all different shows there. I did the morning show, I did afternoons and weekends, nighttime with Steve Summers. So
I love the schmoozer.
Steve's the best. He's wearing the same black turtleneck for 30 years with holes in it, but he's great. Got to talk with Joe Causey a bit because he was in the building.
Brooklyn's own.
Rode the bus together back to Staten Island. But I wanted to ask you about your current work situation. Froggy, ahead of his time, has been working remotely for a long time.
Since 2006. Yeah.
Right. So how was it adapting to go remotely once everything happened?
Well, you know what? It was difficult for all of us. The equipment didn't work. The timing was off. We were talking over each other. I didn't have this mic, so we were using crappy equipment and we didn't have a rhythm. And so the first couple of months were very awkward to figure out what we could talk about, what we shouldn't be talking about, how to do it, how to chime in, how to get the sound to work. It's gotten much easier to the point of people are worried we might not go back for, a while. We all want to get back. That's the goal. But I've worn out this couch. This is a sectional couch. This is like a den that we nobody really sat in very often. And so I come down here to do the morning show and to do the 50-minute morning show podcast. And this couch is like, it's faux leather. It fit the space. And we're like, oh, if we ever have like kids over, they can, jump on the couch. Well, I'm wearing out the couch and I have to keep changing the sectionals because it's not meant for sitting on 4 hours a day, every single day. It was a cheap couch and it's proving to be that. So that's the biggest adjustment, is schlepping these pieces around so that you don't see the butt rips and the back rips, and finding tape that matches.
So with that, your schedule, because I want to talk to you about the hours that you wake up, the hours that you go to bed. Obviously, when you do a morning show like that, you're waking up at crazy hours. Sometimes things are happening during the day and maybe you're napping. Maybe it's hard to keep track of everything that happens during the day. So I want to ask, have you ever settled on an actual sleep schedule? Is it just when you feel tired, you lay down, you take a nap for 2 or 3 hours, you get up, you get right back at it? And Nick always asks this question, but I want to ask you,
okay.
What are your favorite go-to snacks or breakfast foods or lunch foods in the morning when you're usually there we were normal?
Okay, so I'll try to go in order. My sleep pattern is I used to get up at 4:30 to drive into work, to get there by like 5:45. Now I get up around 5:57, jump in the shower, and then I just walk down here. So I get to sleep an extra hour and 20 minutes or so, roughly, give or take, from the times I just gave you. So there's no commute. As far as eating in the morning, when we worked at the radio station, we had lunch at 8 o'clock in the morning because we got up so early. We already had breakfast, right? By like 5:30, we have cereal, whatever. And so by 8, 9 o'clock, you want lunch. And plus we always have restaurants setting food up. So it's normal for me, not healthy, not normal for anybody else, to eat a normal food during the show. That's the hard part, is like, do I want the chicken parm leftovers that are in the fridge, or do I want a bowl of Cheerios? And so it's hard when you're just sitting here and there's no one to keep you engaged, not to be good and eat the Cheerios and then go back and eat the chicken parm also. So you get to the point where you just go, to hell with the Cheerios. I'm just going to eat the chicken parm either way. I might as well just eat the chicken parm. So,
right.
But as far as go-to snacks, at night, I probably eat pistachio nuts because you can eat them while you're watching television. Right. Now, as far as nighttime sleep, I do take a nap in the afternoon. And at night, I told you I get up at like 5:45, 5:50, somewhere at 5:50 something. I go to bed around 2.
Wow.
Because I get a lot of work done at night, and then I have to watch all the late night talk shows, not for work. I'm obsessed with late night talk shows. And so I watch at least the first half hour of every one of them, monologue, table bit. And then I get restless and I fall asleep, like I said, around 1:30, 2 o'clock. Now, but that's not the normal for people on the show.
In normal times, if the Mets were playing a West Coast game starting at 10 o'clock, are you up at 9:50 for the day and you're going to just power right through?
I will try to watch the game as much as possible. Most likely I'll have it on when I fall asleep. I'll have the sleep timer on. And so I'll fall asleep with the game on if I can't make it. As much as I love the team, if it's going into the 9th and they're down 6 runs, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
But if it's a nail-biting pitching duel, yeah, I'm going to stay up. Absolutely.
Were you able to stay up when Bartolo hit the home run?
Yes. Yes.
So I got one more quick food point for you, because I know you're in Jersey now, but I wanted to ask, We also seem to follow this question. The best food places in and around the city. Could be Brooklyn, could be Queens, could be Manhattan, could be Jersey. What are some of your favorite local food spots?
Wow. You know what? I got to be honest. I don't go out a lot anymore. Obviously, but even with work, I tend to get out of the city as soon as possible. So, if you're asking me my favorite 5 borough restaurants that I used to go to or try to make a trip for, in Brooklyn, obviously it's L&B Spumoni Gardens. I mean, come on, Danino's, obviously best mozzarella sticks in the world in Staten Island. My favorite Italian in Manhattan is Carmine's. I love family style. It's ridiculous amounts of garlic, and I know the people that run it, so they tend to send food up a lot to the radio station. So we get a lot of Carmine's and Virgil's barbecue at the station. But
Virgil's was really good.
Yeah, same people at Carmine's. So the same wonderful people that make the best chicken parm are the same people that make the wonderful barbecue up the block.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good stuff. Delino's is definitely very, very good. Haven't been there in a while.
I could name another 15 pizza places that I love. As far as, like for me, Artichoke Basili Pizza, which started in Staten Island, their vodka Sicilian is fantastic. DeFara's Sicilian, unbelievably good.
I'm very biased to Grimaldi's. I love Grimaldi's.
Grimaldi's down by the bridge?
Yes, by the Brooklyn Bridge.
Okay. Now, there are some people that will tell you Giuliana's is better now.
Right.
Because they're using Grimaldi's oven.
Yes.
And they got the flavoring there. However, I believe L&B's, if I'm correct, is opening up across the street.
Yes, they're opening up another location. Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be across the street from Patsy's and Giuliana's. So, I like Grimaldi's, but Grimaldi's is like a classic thin crust Italian style of pizza. It's not my favorite.
Tough location, no parking, can't really sit down.
That's the problem. You have to go. You have to have somebody with you to run in and get the pizza while you're driving around.
Yes.
Damn yuppies.
Not in a great
gentrification ruined the whole area. Back when I was growing up, it was all empty warehouses. Nobody wanted to go anywhere near that area.
And now they gentrified, and it looks really nice.
It does look really nice.
Rent's just too damn high.
Yeah, that's right.
I got one more food question for you.
All right.
Roll and Roaster or Brennan and Carr?
Roll and Roaster. I was a manager there for 3 years.
Oh, wow. Look at that. I had no idea.
How about that? My dad worked there as well. I guess all the greats worked there.
When did your dad work there?
Probably in the late 70s or early 80s.
Way before my time. Okay.
Yeah, but amazing stuff there. Now, you were talking earlier about Jingle Ball. I wanted to ask you, what is one of your favorite Jingle Balls or performances that you were there for? I'm sure you were basically seeing them all.
Yeah. Okay. So being a heavy metal fan, a hard rock fan, pop music doesn't usually win me over big time. But I would say consistently Taylor Swift is always great. When she does her own concert, she's fantastic. We also used to do concerts in a giant stadium called Zootopia, which we did in May, right?
Right.
We had Bon Jovi, we had Aerosmith. So to me, those would be like the most memorable performances. Bare Naked Ladies many years ago was fantastic. I'm trying to remember. Keep in mind with Jingle Ball, the artists get 3 songs, 4 songs, and then they kind of move, right? So they're not doing their full stage show. So it's kind of hard to glom on to one performance and say that was amazing or that was, unbelievable. I've seen a lot of Jingle Ball artists the full show, and I think they're great. I'll tell you what one of the most uncomfortable performances was, and that was at a Zootopia. We had P. Diddy on, and P. Diddy was 2 performers from the end, right? And so, because that's the good spot. You want to be late enough that everyone's there, but you don't want to go last when people are starting to leave. And there were 2 artists after him. I think Shakira was one, and I don't remember who the other one was. And you're given very strict times, right? You're on from 9:11 to 9:53, and give or take a minute or 2, right? He went like 40 minutes longer than he was supposed to, and no one could get him off the stage because you can't walk on the stage and grab P. Diddy, right? You can't do that. And so Shakira's backstage screaming and yelling, and she's pissed. The other act is pissed, Everybody at my company.
She's screaming in non-English.
Yeah. Hello. Like, right. Okay.
Just like the Super Bowl.
Right. Her hips did not lie. She was very upset. Right. And so that was, and it was uncomfortable because we were supposed to go up and introduce Shakira, the morning show. We were going to end the night with Shakira. So like, all right, so we had to work the next day. I think it was a Sunday and it was getting really late. And so we probably went on an hour after we were supposed to, because he wanted to do like his whole new album or whatever he was doing. And he would not come off the stage. And people were like going like, let's go, Diddy. And he's like, nope, more problems, more songs. So he kept going. So that one was memorable in terms of what stuck out.
I guess you got to deal with the divas often, and you've met them all, so not too surprising there that there was some sort of issue with that. What are some of your favorite show memories, and also your favorite remote show memories? I remember one of the cool ones as a listener was when you guys were on the new Norwegian cruise ship, doing a show from a ship. I thought that was pretty cool. But what remotes or just memories in general stand out for you guys?
Well, I'll give you the biggest memory that isn't a fun one, and that is the shows we did after 9/11. Being able to communicate with listeners, give them information, comfort them, tell them where to donate, where to go. Just hearing people, letting them cry, letting them talk, was an amazing experience to be part of. Reading their emails come in when people sent emails as their big form of communication, gut-wrenching emails about the importance of having us on the air, having some normalcy. So that stands out. Getting to throw out the first pitch at Shea Stadium was a big deal. Having my songs play at Shea Stadium, being a Mets fan, right? Getting to interact, getting to meet some of the players, getting to go to spring training and go in the locker room and interview players and talk to them. It was a big deal for me personally. As far as the radio station, I mean, every day is a surprise. Every day is an opportunity to make people laugh, to meet a celebrity that you get to know a little bit, that you get to see if they're nice, if they're really nice, if they're not nice. And you get to meet you in the industry, you get to meet sometimes your heroes, like comedic heroes. If we have, so we had Richard Lewis on the show. He's an icon, right? So getting to meet him was tremendous. It's hard to pinpoint any one thing, as much as I'd like to pinpoint the fact I've been doing it so long on a show that's around so long, when shows don't last this long normally. Right. So, every day is the best day, to be honest.
I'm sure it was pretty cool. You're sitting behind home plate in the 2015 World Series.
Oh, you saw that. Yeah.
How could you not? You and Mike Francesa right there.
Yeah. Mike was to our right. We did say hello to him. I think I got a picture with him. I think I did get a picture with him. And then Bill Maher and, oh God, who did, I know the guy who's the director of Bowling for Columbine.
Oh, I forgot.
I don't know.
He's from Detroit, Fahrenheit.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay. It's killing me now. Michael Moore. Yeah. He and Bill Maher, best friends. They were behind us. Bill O'Reilly was off to the side.
Didn't Jimmy Kimmel out there at the first pitch? Or maybe
he may have. We were on the field. We had field access.
Nice.
So before the game, we were on the field for batting practice. We were on the field for the national anthem. We were by the dugouts. We did well. And then we had David Wright's wife sitting right next to us, like one seat back, two seats over, like right here. So we were in a good spot. And then the one mistake we made, we weren't thinking, right? We knew, because we were there for every playoff game, right? And every World Series game right behind home plate. And when they were going to be eliminated by the Royals, at that point, we had done late night after late night after late night. Scary Jones, my co-executive producer and co-host of my Brooklyn Boys podcast. And we were exhausted by game 5 was the last game, right?
Yep.
Game 5.
And it was clear they weren't going to win, right? Clear they're not going to win. And so like, screw it. I don't want to be here when they win. Let's get out of here. Except we would have been in the scene forever when the Royals play that clinching moment. We could have been there, doing something, or just something that, and we would have been those guys forever in the video for the Royals' big championship moment. We didn't think of that. We was like, just let's get out of here. So that's the one regret, but it was a lot of fun, And I got to go in the press room and I asked questions during the press meetings, during the press conferences I got to ask questions, and that we used the audio on the morning show the next day. I asked Terry Collins a question, and I asked Noah Syndergaard a question.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You remind me a lot of our good friend of the show, Scott Rogowski, formerly of HQ Trivia, comedic writer,
Sure.
and that his biggest thrill was hosting a Mets Facebook Live. I mean, that's the way it is when you're a Mets fan. But
Right.
what do you think, David? You think in the next 5 years the Mets are gonna hopefully win a World Series here?
Well, you know what? It's a crapshoot. You can put the best team on the field,
Right.
and not win. I mean, the '88 Mets should have won a World Series, or at least gotten to the World Series. They didn't win.
Yeah.
06, they should have won. They had the best team.
They should have won.
07, they should have won. 08, they probably at least should have made the playoffs. So I think within 5 years, we as Met fans and baseball, there might be a consensus that they have the best team. Will they win? You can't predict that. You can't predict what's going to happen in a 7-game series or a 5-game series or whatever the playoff structure is next year, if there's a DH or not. But I think they're definitely going to be competitive for the next 5 years. I don't think Steve Cohen's going to allow them to be either low payroll or, God forbid, the '93 Mets, the worst team money could buy. So
that's baseball season. I hope we see you back at MCU Park playing a celebrity softball game real soon.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for that. We were supposed to do one that got canceled. In fact, I joked with somebody recently. The next to last game I played there, Craig Carton, I played second. Craig Carton was my shortstop, and Boomer was the first baseman.
Nice.
And so
Gary
that was
Perone
fun.
always does a great job setting up those games.
Gary Perone's the best. Now, if we could get Dwight Gooden to show up, that'd be great, because he's canceled the last 3 times for whatever reason. I'm sure he had kids to go to school or whatever. But every time Gary will call me, I go, "Who's coming?" He gives me the list, and he goes, "You're going to be on Gooden's team." What? I'm on Gooden's team, and then Gooden doesn't show up. But the last time we played, I don't know if that was the year we met or not. I was on Joe Torre's team, and I'm walking under the tunnels of MCU Park. We just got our shirts to wear for the game, and I think it was Gary is walking with Joe Torre, and they're walking right at me. So he stops. He goes, "Oh, hey, Joe, this is David Brody. Dave Brody, of course, you know Joe Torre." I said, "Of course, player manager for the Mets."
Yeah. When I was there talking to you guys, there was a WWE night, which was cool. And then,
yes, we played with the wrestlers.
Yes, and Peter Rosenberg dislocated his shoulder running into Mike Wood's abs of steel.
Yeah,
and that was a fantastic celebrity softball moment. But the wrestlers, I mean, the place was packed. Everyone was looking to talk to the wrestlers.
The fact that we had wrestlers on our team, giant human beings, it was weird because, they're athletes, right? They're not necessarily baseball players, but they're just massive people, and you feel small next to them, right? They were just you don't just out of context.
Ryback was tremendous.
Yeah, Ryback, right? Ryback was on my team, so out of context, it's like you see a basketball player in a public situation. They seem 5 feet taller than they are because they're a Chuck E. Cheese and they're hitting their head, right? That's how it was on the baseball field, seeing these mammoths. And hitting, and not a lot of them could hit, but they looked like they could hit the ball far if they did, for sure.
Right.
So you touched on it before. We want to talk to you. Obviously, you have some other side projects. We want to talk to you about the Brooklyn Boys podcast with you and Scary.
Sure.
You live in the life. I mean, Nick and I have a podcast where we're 2 friends shooting the shit. It must be amazing to know that not only did you find somebody in life who grew up in a very similar area to you,
same area
that you wouldn't even know about until later on. But how did that start? Whose idea was it? Was it your idea or his idea? And how did the concept for that formulate? And how did you guys get to iHeart?
How did we get into iHeart? Okay, so Scary was a college radio major, and so he took college internships, and he interned at the radio station, and then they hired him as a phone op, which was back in the day where your job was just to answer the phones for the DJs. And then eventually he was the phone op for the morning show, and then worked his way up to being the sound guy. And then the guy who gave Elvis everything he needed, could put the commercials in the machine, whatever he had to do. He was the Swiss Army knife. And then eventually, after I started there, about 3 years after I started, we were both doing a lot of a lot of work, like 10 different things each. And then they promoted the two of us. I guess they couldn't promote one without the other. And so when the producer left, they made us co-executive producers, and he handled these 20 things and I handled these 20 things. And then we overlapped on a couple of things that we'd work together on. And we just became very friendly because we both grew up in Bensonhurst. In fact, we had a third person, Ronnie, who he went to school with. The three of us are from Bensonhurst, all working on the same show, right? Which is kind of odd. And it got so funny where my father would hear him on the radio and think it was me because we had the same inflections and I wouldn't say the same accent, but similar phrasings, right? And so we became friends, and because we were always working together in a little studio, producing comedy, producing jingles. I would give him ideas. He knew how to edit audio before I learned how to. So I would give him stuff and he'd produce it, or I'd run ideas by him because he had the job and I didn't. So I would go to him, and Elvis said, you go with Scary every morning. You come in, you sit with him. So he taught me how to edit audio, and he taught me how radio worked, and he showed me everything. And we just became good friends. And we both Met fans, and we liked the same pizza places. And so we started, going to games and hanging out together. As far as the podcast goes, he didn't ask me to be on his podcast originally. He and Greg T and Ronnie, the other Bensonhurst guy, did a podcast called The Off Air Show. However it came about, they did the podcast. And they did it 5 days a week and then 4 days a week. And it was very different than what we do. They all had different ideas of what the show should sound like. And eventually they wanted to kill each other and slowly started dropping out of the show. And then eventually it just ended. They weren't enjoying it anymore. So when Ronnie left the podcast, Scary asked me to join the podcast. And I said, nope, I'm not doing that because, number one, I'm not second choice to anybody. I'm not going to replace somebody that left because they hated it. Why would I want to join a toxic environment? Tongue in cheek. Second of all, I'm very strong-minded. I have ideas for what I would want. And your concept, although is good, it's not the concept I want. And I don't want to move into your apartment. I want to move into my own apartment, or the two of us become roommates in a new apartment, but I don't care where you put the glasses. I want to have a conversation about where the glasses go. Right. So that went on for a while. He tried doing the podcast, the two of them. Then eventually it just kind of petered out. Mm-hmm. So he came to me and he said, let's go. You and me, we'll do the off-air show. Greg T's gone. It'll just be us. And I said, I'm really busy. I don't have time for a podcast. And I'm certainly not going to do your podcast and replace that guy so that people can go, oh, I liked it better when the other guy was there. I'm going to compare how it sounded. It's not the way it's going to work. We either do a new thing or I'm not interested. And he kept asking me. So because I had the upper hand, because he wanted me and I didn't want to do a podcast, I said, all right, here's everything I want. And if you agree to all of it, I'll do the podcast. So I gave him the list and I said, I want to talk about this. I want to do this segment. I don't want to do birthdays because he loved doing birthdays. I'm not doing birthdays on a podcast where people can listen a year later. Makes no sense. I want to call it the Brooklyn Boys. Because Elvis always, whenever Scary and I would fight or get excited about something, we'd pitch it to him. And, we're very loud and boisterous. And you go, oh, there you go. The Brooklyn Boys are arguing again. Oh, the Brooklyn Boys. And so I said, we should call ourselves that. Let's call ourselves the Brooklyn Boys. I'll design the logo. It'll be blue and orange for the Mets, which it is. And this is my idea for the show. And then he said, well, here's what I want to do for the show. I said, all right, I like that. I like that. I don't like that. And again, it was birthdays. And then some other things that I didn't think were going to work. And there was a couple of things that I wanted to do, he didn't like, and we didn't do them. But for the most part, 85% of what we both wanted, we did. And then we added things, we dropped things, saw how things worked. And then after about 7 or 8 months, I would say it took off. And by the way, I'm watching on the TV behind me. They're showing David Wright's last game against the Marlins on SNY. And I was there and Scary wasn't.
Oh, what happened?
Well, so I'll tell you the quick story. He and I had been, we went to all the big games, right? Obviously there was no playoff games in 2019. We had gone to opening day. I think we went to a Met Yankee game and maybe one of the afternoon game. It fit our schedule. And we knew that this game for about a month was earmarked David Wright's last game of the season. We have to go. right? We have to go to this game. And so we got tickets, made the arrangements, and about 4 or 5 days before the game, he says, "Oh, my girlfriend wants to go to this free concert in Central Park. It's really important to her, and I told her I would go." I said, "It's David Wright. He's our favorite player. It's his last game. It's Mets history. You tell your girlfriend it's history." "Yeah, but it's the last game. He might not even play a lot, and I don't know." And I told her I'd go. So I took one of my coworkers, one of the girls I work with, Danielle, who used to work at Citi Field and Shea Stadium, knows everybody. And so we went. We had the best time. We went on the field. I got to talk to David before the game. After the game, I got to see him up in the Mets booth doing his post-game interview. We had a great experience, a great time. And the whole time I'm texting, "How's your stupid concert, Scary? I just hung out with David Wright." So
If
we
you
had a
can
good
get
time.
if you can get any Mets player, past or present, on the Brooklyn Boys podcast, who would it be?
Probably John Franco.
Brooklyn
Only
Boys.
because you're not asking me who I want to meet. You're asking me who would fit in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
John grew up in my neighborhood, right? So I'm friendly with John. I've gotten him Jingle Ball tickets. He's always at the Brooklyn Cyclones. We always play, the games together. I love John, loved him as a player. He's the most Brooklyn guy that would fit right in with our podcast, if that makes sense.
I have a funny story myself.
Okay.
One of my good friends, his name is Andrew. A couple years ago, actually, it was more than a couple years ago. It was almost 10 years ago now. Jesus Christ. He had tickets for two things. He had tickets to see Steve Martin live at the St. George Theater here on Staten Island.
Oh, that's
And he
tough.
had tickets to a Mets game, right?
Okay.
Johan
Wouldn't you
Santana.
know?
It's got
Wouldn't you know it was the
Wait. Don't say a word. Did they play St. Louis?
It was the Johan Santana no-hitter.
It was the St. Louis game. Yeah, I was
Yep.
okay. Yeah. He went to
He
see Steve
missed-
Martin.
He went to see Steve Martin on the
Oof.
night that the Mets had their only no-hitter.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that? I mean, that's
Well, the
That's
chances
incredible.
mathematically would be 1 in how many games they've played at home since 1962. That's your odds.
yeah.
It's pretty easy to do the math on that.
Yeah,
So-
but what are the odds on seeing Steve Martin live on Staten Island?
Yeah,
You know,
listen, at the St. George Theater, I mean, I get that. I get that.
I always like to tell that story. It's a great story.
good one.
to tell.
Here's the thing. At some point when the no-hitter was maybe in the 6th inning, if he had his phone on him, right, he should have gotten an alert and left immediately driven to Citi Field.
So got there for the 9th inning.
Right. Wait a minute. That was 08? What year was that? 10? So it was Citi Field at that point, right?
2000.
Yeah, it was Citi Field. What was
11,
it,
11,
or
Citi
12?
Field, right.
Yeah, it was 11.
So he
Yeah.
should have gone and I would have left. I would have run the hell out of there. Without traffic.
I mean, that was the game that they ran his arm into the ground. He was never the same after that game, but I think you guys would admit it was totally worth it.
Well, he would say it's totally worth it. Terry Collins feels guilty about it. I'll tell you what's a shame is that, the Beltran hit down the line. Some would say that was a fair ball.
Right.
Some in St. Louis would say it's a fair ball. Right.
Right.
So yeah, it was a no-hitter. It looks that way in the record books. It's a no-hitter. Yeah, I think, I don't know. You'd hate for the guy to get pulled out of the game, right? With 110 pitches, 120 pitches. And it could have been weather related because it was cold. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been the next time he pitched. Like maybe if they had given him 6 days rest, it wouldn't have happened. There might've been a way to prevent that. So yeah, there's no way to know if that game did it, but maybe pitching on short rest or regular rest the next day contributed to it. But don't forget, he did pitch again.
Right.
The next start. That's probably where he did the full damage. I'll tell you a quick story. My daughter does gymnastics, and her best friend did a tumbling pass on the mat, and she landed and badly damaged. I mean, bad crack in her she tore Achilles tendon and cracked her heel. Right. But what she didn't tell my daughter is that she had partially fractured it 6 months ago, but the other foot was worse. So they kind of ignored it and figured it would heal, but it was landing again on it that broke it, not the fact that she landed on it. You understand? It was already weakened.
Yeah.
So I feel like that may be the case with Johan. It was
Right.
pitching again was the problem, not that he
Right.
tore it that night per se.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
totally agree.
As I compare Johan Santana to a 15-year-old little girl doing gymnastics.
Speaking of Matt Harvey gave a rib for this franchise, and you gotta hope the Dark Knight will rise again with the Baltimore Orioles this year. But you were in the building when Harvey said, I'm going back out there for the 9th inning.
Yep.
I think I still think that was the right call.
There's video of me yelling, "Let him pitch," or whatever the chant was, and Harvey. The problem wasn't letting him go back in. The problem was letting him pitch to a second batter. Once he walked the first batter, you got to take him out. You have to,
Right.
because that run scored, right? He walked Kane, I think it was. And so
Right.
once you're so pumped up, you walk the first. And if I remember correctly, he threw a 3-2 curveball. I think he threw a breaking pitch on 3-2, where you're trying to get cute and ballsy at that point. You got to throw the fastball, if I remember correctly. And then once he walks the guy, now as Terry Collins, you're justified to say, Matt, you got to come out. You got a guy on base. I gotta bring in a guy that can shut this thing down. Let's go. Now, Familia blew game one. It wasn't like you had, I would say Dennis Eckersley, in the bullpen, but he blew a World Series game also. So, and so did Mariano. So it doesn't matter who you bring in, but what would you guys have done? Would you have left him in?
Listen, I think the biggest issue was Lucas Duda. He literally threw away the World Series. I mean, he couldn't hit the whole. I was at the playoffs screaming, pull this guy, bench the guy. He was like 0 for 22 at a point, but ultimately the offense just wasn't enough. I mean, Familia, Harvey, whatever.
From a Yankees fan perspective,
I don't want to hear you. Gotta go. Thanks for having me on.
The series was put in that position earlier on. If Familia is able to shut down the door in either game one or what was it, game 4? I mean, if you could get to that point 2-2, I think it's an easier decision. And I think Terry would end up making this decision to pull Matt Harvey in that spot, because he's probably thinking, if I do need him again, I can have him again. At that juncture, I think he thought to himself, Harvey's probably not going to pitch again in the series. So he wanted to let him close it out. That is from my perspective. I know you two don't want to hear it, but
listen, you can rationalize it as far, leaving Duda in. I won't say it's as bad as leaving Bill Buckner in '86, because Buckner was crippled at that point, and it was regular routine for him to come out every game, and to only have him in so he could celebrate on the field was moronic, right? Duda wasn't an awful defensive first baseman, and you can't anticipate a throw home from the first baseman. Like, how often does that happen? We're going to go, the guy doesn't throw well, I should probably take him out of the game. You're going to put your outfielders who have better arms in the outfield. I get that. Now, I don't remember who the backup first baseman was defensively at that point.
Probably Kelly Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know if you had
it was Kelly Johnson.
Right. So is he a Gold Glove?
The thing was, Duda didn't hit the whole playoffs. So if he's not going to hit, why is he getting in there?
You were hoping. Look, maybe you could have moved Daniel Murphy to first base and put another guy at second.
Wilmer Flores is at shortstop, remember?
Yeah, Wilmer, right. Wilmer couldn't play first because Tejada was out. And so you were a little bit limited. And, Daniel Murphy had hands of stone also. So I don't remember off the top of my head who was the backup first baseman. I'm sure your listeners will tell you at some point. But I don't know if pulling Duda was the move. In hindsight, it was the move, but who knew you got to play at the plate from the first baseman throwing home?
Speaking of bad moves, how about releasing Travis d'Arnaud after 6 at-bats, goes on to be an absolute stud, one of the best catchers in baseball?
Well, look, Travis got a lot of opportunities with the Mets. He was with the team for, 5 years, roughly, and he was never healthy. He never hit. He was an average defensive catcher. He had a lot of promise. He got traded for 2 Cy Young winners. Look, Justin Turner, same thing. They didn't re-sign him as a utility infielder. And, now he's a superstar with Los Angeles. They traded Jeff Kent, a different regime, but every team's got those players. I don't think anybody could, anticipate everybody becoming great. Who knew Daniel Murphy? I mean, Daniel Murphy, they should have known. All the clues were there for sure.
Yeah, perennial 150 hit guy. I mean, it's fine. I mean, decisions like that happen. Every organization makes it. Don't
Yeah,
do
and
this-
you know what? You don't know if Darno is going to do that in New York.
right.
You don't know if the right guy got to him the same way the right guy got to Daniel Murphy, the right hitting instructor,
Right.
the right. Maybe he's got a psychologist in Atlanta that talked him through his yips, or he's got a strength instructor that worked really well. You never know what turns it on for a guy, where the light bulb goes on finally. But I mean, how many chances are you going to give Travis Darno? Now they replaced him with Ramos, who was a disappointment. They should have given Grandal a little more money at the time. He wanted 4 years and more money. So I think they're good now, but yeah, it's a shame when I saw somebody on Instagram, they put the Mets lineup and the Braves lineup, and they said position by position, who's better at each position. And it killed me that people ranked the Braves catcher better than our catcher when he was our catcher, right? Like, I don't want their catcher to be our guy. So, what are you going to do? Bastard.
Dave, thank you for coming on with us. This was so much fun.
That's it. We're ending on Travis Darno.
No, I do have one.
Gotta end on a high note, don't you?
Yeah,
know?
give me something.
Well, no, I have I think a really good question for you. And
Okay.
I think it's very, very, I wouldn't say rare, but it's very difficult to make it to where you have gotten to in the world of comedy. And I think there are a lot of factors. I think a lot of people out there want to do it and are afraid to show the world who they really are. A lot of people are really afraid to if you're doing improv and stuff, or if you want to do like stand-up comedy, a lot of people have tremendous anxiety getting up on being on stage for the first time, letting their voices be heard. So I want to ask you, for our listeners, what was that one point where you dove headfirst and you said, screw this, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to care what anybody else thinks of me. I'm going to do it like Sinatra. I'm going to do it my way. And you did it your way. You are doing it your way. But for a lot of people out there, it's very difficult for them to come to terms with the fact who they are themselves and what they are. So how did you get yourself to the point where you were so confident in being able to do this? And what was your mindset?
Well, first off, I happen to be very cocky to begin with. You have to have a certain ability in yourself. Like wide receivers don't tend to be shy people, right? They're the loudest, brashest, cockiest. The quarterbacks all have the same personality, right? So you kind of have to have a mindset that you're funny. Okay. For me, it was a whole life of watching comedy, listening to radio comedy, writing comedy in school, making people laugh in school, being the class comedian. It wasn't like I woke up when I was 25 and well, I think I'm going to be funny. It was a lifetime of people at least responding in a way that made me feel like I was funny. The thing that made me think I could do it professionally, if you're local to the area, you've heard of Long Island Newsday, right? Yes. The newspaper. So they used to have a column called Punchlines, late 80s, early 90s. And what they would do is, it was about 7 inches wide, 3 inches high. And it was scattered somewhere in the back end of the newspaper. And it would be a couple of punchlines from Letterman, Leno, monologues, Conan, Bill Maher, and then a couple of people that would write into Newsday and submit their monologue jokes. And so my cousin had done it, and he had gotten in a couple of times. And I thought, well, if he could do it, let me give it a shot. Because I would watch the late night shows and I would think about what jokes I would write. And so I started faxing in jokes for this. And every week consistently, they were using my material. And I would, so it'd be like Jay Leno's joke, David Brody's joke, David Letterman's joke. Like I'm being put amongst these people. Look, the guy who was the editor, he liked my stuff. He wasn't the head writer for Letterman, but he made me feel like my stuff was worth putting in print. And so I thought, well, who else can I write for? So I started writing for comedy magazines and figuring out how I could fax into late night talk shows and joining writing clubs and just any place that would let me write, I would submit for free just to get it published. And the more you get accepted, the more you start to believe that, wait a minute, I could do this. And then when the guy in Boston reached out to me and said, this is really good, we're going to play it on the radio. That's when I said, well, it's more than the $30. It's the confirmation that people you don't know aren't humoring you. They genuinely think you're funny, right? So when I worked for Roland Roaster in Sheepshead Bay, my friend Vinny used to say, you know what? You're rolling roaster funny. Like you're funny in the kitchen. You're funny. You're rolling roaster funny, but you're not like funny. You couldn't like go perform comedy. You're not that like you're funny among us. Right. And so I proved to him by going up on stage and performing, and he'd be like, all right, that's fine. You're funny. But it's breaking out of that shell where you're in like, they have those nights at Caroline's Funniest Accountant, right? It's like the people that go on American Idol, everyone they know tells them they can sing and then they go on and they can't. You have to get past that. You have to believe you can sing and you have to believe you're funny, right? So you have to make people laugh you don't know. And once you do that, it builds confidence that you can make people laugh that you don't know. They're not humoring you. Like my mom would laugh, but it's mom. I know it's your mom, right? So she laughs. But it's when you guys just laugh that I go, okay. It's when the woman at the checkout counter at the supermarket laughs, or anywhere I go, I try to leave with someone laughing. So today I went to a doctor's appointment. The nurse took my blood pressure. I made her laugh, right? I said things that were behind her mask. She was laughing. And then when she walked outside, I heard them go, oh yeah, he works at Z100. No wonder you're laughing. Like that's my goal. So if strangers laugh, you got a shot that someone will pay you to do it. That's the next step, right? Seinfeld, you should look it up. He talks about the stages of comedy where you make yourself laugh, you make your family laugh, you make your friends laugh, you make strangers laugh. Somebody pays you to make strangers laugh. And so it's just a matter of going to the next step until you don't hit a wall. And then you get lucky. I got lucky, plain and simple. So
yeah, luck always plays a factor into it.
Yeah.
I hope that was a really good high note for you.
Yeah,
we
much
really
better.
enjoyed you. This was so much freaking fun. We hope one day that somebody will recognize how funny Nick and I are, and hopefully we could join you on iHeart and somebody can pay us to do what we do.
Right.
But again, you were tremendous. We had so much fun doing this.
Thank you. And thanks for being good sports about our initial email chain where I wasn't on it.
No
and
problem.
I gave you crap about it. It was all tongue in cheek on my end. I hope you know that.
No problem.
No problem.
Your emails to us were insanely funny. You are an insanely funny guy.
Period.
We always there you go.
Nice.
We always give our guests here the last word. So if there's anything else off the top of your head that you would like to blurt out and share to the world, go right ahead, Dave.
Well, you know what? I would say that your podcast is fantastic. This was a great interview. Very relaxed. You guys were prepared. You researched me, which is very impressive. I like that. You've provided a lot of material for my Brooklyn Boys podcast. You mentioned my Walkers and Talkers podcast, which is a Walking Dead podcast, both available everywhere.
Yes.
And then follow me if you want on social media at David Brody, and let's go Mets. Oh, by the way, one last thing. You guys didn't ask me about my jersey. I wore my special jersey for this. This is my Star Trek Mets jersey. So I thought you'd ask me about it. It's got a silver patch.
Star Trek night. Do you have a Mercury Mets jersey? Remember that was supposed to be 2021. It was supposed to be on Mercury this year.
Yeah. No, I don't have a Mercury Mets jersey because I'm a Mets fan. That was all. I still have nightmares of Oral Hershiser wearing that thing. I mean, it was just horrific. Of all the jerseys, that was the worst.
We had on Turk Wendell. He was like, that was such crap. Like,
oh, you got Turk.
Yeah, Turk on, yeah.
Yeah, Turk was off.
Jay Horwitz and Turk, yeah.
Oh, nice. By the way, I phone tapped Jay Horwitz.
Oh, that must have been incredible.
It was, but it wasn't great because he didn't get animated. But what was really funny was he left his phone on after he hung up. So I got to hear him saying they played a phone call on me, and they were making believe something, and I fell for it. It was that guy from Z100 we always deal with. He was telling me that he wanted to. And so I could hear him telling everyone in the office that he had been pranked. And I didn't want to hang up because it was gold.
Hey, Jeff Wilpon, I just got phone taps.
Oh, Wilpon is the one who suggested it. They were in a they were in a boardroom meeting, and I was really good friends with Shannon Ford, who used to be Jay's executive of PR. Yep. She's no longer with us, unfortunately. And he said, I want to play a joke on Jay. They had some big event. They put him in charge of some big event, and they wanted to prank him. And he said, Shannon, you're friends with that guy Brody on Z100, right? Would he do it? Get him on the phone. He writes all the songs for us. Get him. He'll do it. And so Jeff requested me, and Shannon contacted me and said, we want you to phone tap Jay Horwitz. So
amazing. We need to get some more Mets phone taps. I think there should be some good reactions by like the current cast of players. We can
yeah. Well, I tell you, I would phone tap Bauer if he was a Met. Absolutely.
You and Syndergaard could call them together and get another Twitter feud.
Love Syndergaard. Love him. Love him.
Say hopefully he's back and they re-sign him. But David, this was a lot of fun. Great talking about your career, the show, and of course the Mets. We could do a whole other show just on the Mets, and Joe could just sit there as a Yankee fan and then just listen.
Listen, his name is Joe. He's from Staten Island. He has to be a Yankee fan. What choice does he have?
He's a big Jets fan too.
So, wait a minute. Hold it. Pause.
Oh no.
You're not allowed to do that.
Oh boy.
You're not allowed. I'll tell you why. Nick, what are you a fan of, Nick? Who are you a fan of?
I'm a fan of the Mets,
the
Knicks, the Rangers, and the Giants.
Okay. I'll tell you why that works for you. You probably were 10 to 20 in 1986. How old were you?
1986, I was -6.
Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know how old you are, but people who were old enough to remember 86, when the Giants won and the Mets won, kids became Mets Giants fans, right?
Yep.
I'll accept that. Okay. I'll accept it.
Well, for me, it's very more simple. It's just that my grandparents were New York Giants and Brooklyn Dodgers fans.
Okay.
So they like the Giants of New York Giants.
Okay.
And then they like the Mets. So
right. Okay. I'll
Jets
give you that.
Jets and Yankees, though.
Listen, Joe, we got to talk. We got to have an intervention here. You could end the podcast. I don't care. We're gonna talk here. the Jets, as you know, are named after the planes that fly over Shea Stadium.
That's correct.
Okay.
We used to play at Shea Stadium.
That's right. I used to go. The Jets are the second-class franchise. The Jets don't win. The Mets, for the most part, don't win. We're the same fan base. We're the same suffering, struggling to find something good to say about our team fan base. We both sat in Shea Stadium, froze our asses off, watching losing teams, talking about 1969, and that was all we had for the longest, right? That's it. We suffer. You don't come in here with your 27 championship rings and all of a sudden be like, oh, I win all the time. I'm going to throw the Jet fans a bone and root for the Jets. You don't have it in you. You don't know what it's like to suffer. You're a guy on a yacht looking at the little boats and saying, I'm going to buy a little boat. You don't get to buy a little boat. Go on your yacht, stay with your 27 rings. You don't get to be a Jets fan. No. Nick, tell him no.
He's not allowed. He can't.
It's not
It's
normal.
like I have to reconsider my fandom.
It's not normal. And if you're a Jets fan, you don't get to root for the Yankees. You suffer with the Met fans. You don't get to reach above your station in life.
It's interesting though. It's that
it's either you get totality of happiness or you're totality of happiness or miserable.
Right.
I know a lot of Yankee fans. It must be a Staten Island thing. It's very.
But who could? You can't figure Staten Island out. You can't. If they're Jets fans, it's because they're Italian and they were Yankee fans and then didn't want to drive to the Bronx. They're like, Queens is closer. It's already a schlep to go over the bridge. Fine. And you know what? They probably couldn't get Giants tickets. They're like, we can get Jets tickets. We'll go to the Jets game. That's whatever.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the thing is just Yankee fans are frauds. Who knows? That's good.
Okay. All right. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, that's the way we're going to end it. We'll end on a high note here.
All right. Next year, when I'm on for the 1 year anniversary of this podcast, we'll talk about the Yankees more.
There we go. Good. We'll have you on after the Mets beat the Yankees in the World Series.
How great would that be? And
Clemens
runs out and punches. And and Piazza runs out and punches whoever's pitching for the Yankees to make up for what happened.
I thought it was the ball. I thought it was the ball.
It was the ball.
Why are you throwing a bat? I think I fell off the guy. Unbelievable.
Missed opportunity. All right, guys.
Thanks, David. That's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our awesome special guest, David Brody, and for my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I am Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.